Okay, sir. Good evening. Very good evening to all the participants. It is such a great pleasure to invite Air Vice Marshal O.P. Tiwari, AVSM, VSM, sir, to this today's interview. He is a distinguished Air Force warrior, and he has risen to he has seen the highest levels of Air Force. He has been involved with a number of training institutions and also with NCC earlier in his career, and presently he is member UPSC. So he has a great mix of a warrior and an academician. Such a great privilege for us, sir, to host you around and welcome you to FGS Forum, sir. Today we embark upon a very important topic, and in the light of the Tawang clashes. Actually, these clashes are not new, and we have been witnessing such clashes in the past. It actually started off immediately to war. We have faced such clashes on the line of sexual control during 1967, and thereafter in 1975, 77, and in 87, 88 when we had Samdurangchu, and thereafter a number of other incidents that occurred, and recent being at Yangtze in Tawang. With the changing geopolitics and with the changing balance of power in the world over, China assumes importance, being one of the very largest economies, in fact, one of the largest in the world. In fact, in the South Asia, it wields lot of economical power. It has spread its wings economically over large number of territories in Southeast Asia, Africa, Middle East, and is influential the world over. However, its expansionism, which is not due to the contemporary history, its expansionism dates back to Qing dynasty, Han dynasties, and has been always on the agenda of the Communist Party of China. It is no surprise thus that China has border disputes with more than 23 countries in its neighborhood, including the countries which are not in direct neighborhood, like Indonesia. So there is something, it shows that there is a pattern in terms of expansionism. It has also tried to expand its influence in South China Sea for a long time. And from South China Sea, it is trying to also wield influence in the high Himalayas in our neighborhood. Apart from this, if you notice, the Belt and Road Initiative of China was to only, India did not agree to that and did not join Belt and Road Initiative of China. Otherwise, see the kind of influence it holds the world over. The ironical part is, we all understand that Indo-China relations are not in a smooth weather. Despite that, our trade has only blossomed. You'll be surprised to note that we now have trade of $103 billion with China. Out of that, most of it is imports. And imports are mostly, Chinese imports are of finished goods, and our exports are only raw material. The way in the British era, the Britishers took all our raw material from our country and sent it in manufactured goods later on to world over. Not taking much time, I will start by with the interview with Air Marshal Tiwari, and few important questions that we want to raise. The first one being, China's sinister design over the past 7 decades have truly been exposed at so many occasions, but Sino-India relations nosedived post-Galwan clashes in June 20. Moreover, the Chinese transgressions along the LAC by the PLA troops have unfortunately only increased in intensity in the past few years. What is the genesis of this increased anxiety on the Chinese side from your perspective, sir?
Manoj, thanks asking this question to me. See, if you look at China changed after 1949-50 when they threw out that their government who had been working leading China, and finally they went to Taiwan and the communist government was formed up. So they have taken an oath to whatever parts are there, you will unite them. But practically they have been trying, but it has not been possible. Okay? They tried Taiwan, Mongol, but now they have got so many internal problems. So many internal problems China has got because of their own policies, other policies, and that even Corona, the China virus. So they have got a lot of internal problems. Which solution for them, what is feasible or not feasible, it has to be seen. Now, what happens? What China does goes outside. He does some problem in Taiwan, somewhere in this case, in India. Then they get that feeling that we want to do something and take the feedback of the world, what they have to do. Now, see, what is in China's interest in India's border? China has occupied Aksai Chin. It is for their interest to connect two major portions of the China. They developed a lot of infrastructure. India didn't object to it initially. Probably but they didn't have any infrastructure to position our army. They're all ill-equipped. They could not fight them. However, during the last 10, 12 years, even during Manmohan Singh time itself, something has started that will build up infrastructure. But the boost has been given during the last 7, 8 years. So now China-India border is actually divided into three: East, Middle, and the West. So I'm talking about the Ladakh sector, where the border is maximum. Out of total about 3,400 kilometers border, that area occupies maximum. Now India has made sufficient infrastructure that is extending all along the border, along the border of the Indian border from the Darbuk to three places to the north. This is now helping, assisting us, Indian troops, to get to the border. They said, actually, that's what they didn't want. China never wanted this because India's activation of DBO airfield, which has been touching them hard. So they didn't like it. So now what happened is they tried that, Galwan. And probably, like we are not prepared. Indian army were not prepared because iske pehle jo bhi, whatever is to happen, that chota incident has been happening every time. And we used to ignore them. Because the government policy was also such, we should not increase, we should not get into that border. Too much of confrontation of the China is not interested in the country. But this Galwan took a surprise and our people suffered. Even they also suffered. But anyway, it got resolved and they got set back. After that, you see, there was a lull period for quite some time. It happened in 20. Before 2017, in 1917, it happened that near Bhutan border, Toklam. The problem was with the Bhutan border. India was waiting for a Bhutan to approach, to ask India to interfere. So here again, India was prepared so that standoff took off. It was there for some time, quite less time, and it got resolved. But Toklam we were not prepared, so it took a different turn altogether. Now the latest one, Galwan. Sorry, now the latest Galwan. Now latest one in that. Tawang. Tawang again here. We don't have good infrastructure so far. Though road is being constructed, Sela Tunnel likely to be commissioned in the early part of 2023. Till now, this road approach to Tawang gets blocked in the month of November, December. So China also, their troops also know it. Sufficient supply, any other thing on the line, it gets blocked and it is disseminated. And people will start taking it lightly. Winters are set in. Winters are set in for India also, China also. So probably they planned that time. India may not retaliate, may not be in full force, and will try it out. If you succeed, you can come back. But looking at the incidents happening for last 7 to 10 years, all post everything, Indian Army is ready at all places. Okay? And at the day result happened, they were thrown out. Now, coming back to this, why China is trying all these systems to India in spite of so much economic bilateral that like Manoj had told him 130 billion is already there. Why it is trying again and again? See, China has grown economically, phenomenally. Now, if you see, even Japan grew phenomenally at certain time, but moment their population growth stopped, there was time in Japan where the people are 30 years and above, they didn't want to get married. Slowly, that growth of economic growth, it is really saturated and there was hardly growth. Now, looking at China, after they've taken that one-child policy, its growth rate has been now coming down gradually. And in fact, it was, Manoj may correct also, it came down to as low as 0.4%. Time is not very far when it come down further. Here, so China has got already sufficient infrastructure, everything has been established. Mainly that production, the finished products, which is that maximum market from where they get much money. India is their market, but India is also dependent on them. Not of other sectors. Though India has started making Atmanirbhar, but it's going to take some time. Why China is taking these chances? If they will lose the market, that is, I think India's market is about China's is about nearly about 10%. China's growth. So they will go to lose out. But they also know it that India it cannot do without China for some time. It is going to take some time. It is going to take some time by the time India establishes financially. And the deficit, what has been so far, it will have to reduce considerably. India has to take very concrete steps. Concrete steps that in terms of government policies, other policies, where the manufacturing has to start. Even during Indira Gandhi time, other time, our manufacturing, we believed in the capital budget, capital production. Productions of items and manufacturing never took off in India, and we continued whatever growth were there, we had into the software and other development. Now this step has to be taken, step has initiated, and a lot of even technology, other things, we have to get it from China, but that is not possible. So India is trying to get it from the USA and other Western worlds. And even that certain, after that coronavirus, we call it coronavirus, lot of companies plan to shift from China to India. See, nearly about 1,000 companies from abroad, they've invested in China. Now about 300, not more than, they have not stopped the production. Shifting of India is going to take some time. The second part of China is China's investment in India is also very high. China's companies' investment in India. But they have not invested directly. They invested through Singapore, invested through Panama, invested through Mauritius, invested through Dubai. So these are the companies' investment in India. The situation, the tension increases between India and China, they are also going to suffer. But why they are taking these chances? It is difficult to apprehend. Probably what happens if they try and they get back. So it will never get escalated what you think so much. Now, main reason why China is other thing is scared about it is that Tawang has got a monastery which is second largest, second biggest between. Yeah, Manoj, bata dena if I am going away from the topic. Manoj? Manoj, can you hear me? Satan, can you hear me?
Sir, please carry on.
हाँ ठीक है तो मेरे को बोल देना रोक के डेविड का नाम ना so now the China is looking sometime ahead because Tawang being the second biggest monastery okay that monastery has got a lot of influence on the Tibet. A large group of Tibetans who were responsible for a uprising or the whose likelihood of getting into the making strong and fighting for the rights again. So this is a very strong point and China believes that Tawang monastery might be one of the centers, which will be a center to all Tibetans to unite and start fighting against the China. So that thing they have not come up because they have forcibly occupied Tibet. Now this thing possibility is there because one of their one of the lamas from the Tibet was from Tawang in some 1600th century. So Tawang has got a lot of importance in the Tibetan history and Tibetan culture and Tibetan history and Tibetan culture. So that they want to have directly. Second region in China is more bothered because Aksai Chin ka road link what they have made between the two states, I'm not able to, Xinjiang and other places, that is very important for them. China wants to create a confusion here and read a compromise so that India agrees for giving up Aksai Chin, claim over Aksai Chin, and brings a peace at the Arunachal Pradesh. This proposal was given to Jawaharlal Nehru also. He refused. Even he was not a very strong prime minister, but even he refused because he understood the China's intentions. But now this is the tactics what China keeps following in between. So that if you have come to a negotiation table, say that you reject or you forget about the claim on the Aksai and you will forget on the Aksai Chin. But that India is not in that situation right now. However, financially, Indian industries are dependent. Indian startups are dependent on the funds from the China. Like to give an example, Paytm has got a lot of investment funded from the China. A lot of money has come to India. Now that it has to be seen, now India has to play a very balanced role, not to let it escalate, because totally cut off from China. Our growth, what you expect, may not be at the same pace. Even after that Chinese virus, COVID-19, the trade deficit has increased. In spite of all our efforts, Indian manufactured goods we buy, you still find, or businessmen still find stuff taken from China or imported from China is cheaper than the Indian manufacturing. So now government has to take a very strong initiative to reduce the taxes so that what has been manufactured, if not cheaper, should be at the same cost what you get from China. That only we can encourage, and so that you have to detach slowly. Economic dependence on China of India has to slowly reduce, and that will take some time. It may not happen so soon, though the space and everything has been picked up. But this is very important. Now, what happens because of economic dependency? What will happen is that war will escalate or escalate. Now, if you look at China, what they did Taiwan, they gave a lot of ultimatums to USA and Taiwan. But finally, they moved back and nothing happened. Here also they tried. Now, Tawang, they tried, but they faced. Now, even in that international media, they went there said, we have not crossed the border. It is Indian troops that crossed the border. So they will keep trying for some time. And by the time when they realize India is not the same what was about 1960s or 70s or 80s, so it may stop. Whether Indian government steps, firm steps needs to be taken to detach from the Chinese economy, that will put more pressure on China. So it is a very thin edge whether to tilt this side or that side. If you want to detach from China, our growth will suffer a little bit. So the policy has to be such. We look after your border, build up our industries, and then gradually get detached from China. Now, see, the drugs industries, for example, I'm telling you, drugs industry, India was doing very well. But lately, last 10, 12 years, like API, a lot of inputs have to get depend on the China. Fertilizers will depend on the China. So these are such a basic industries which has to be formed up, and you have to start. So because now our fear of escalation or fear of that war will take place, that is definitely going to get controlled because of the financial imperatives and the interdependency between the China and India. That's the basic of my understanding. And I hope I have made myself a little bit clear. But there some questions, I can answer them, you can take on them. And there are certain things which you may not be aware, will take some time, will come back again, study, carry out some research, and come back to you again. Don't say that God is saying the truth, and you are ready to learn, and we learn together.
Yes, sir. Very rightly said, sir. You have brought out some very prominent observations. especially about the one of the largest monasteries in Tawang Valley and the geo-strategic location of Yangtze. Basically, it's on the international tri-junction of Bhutan, India, and China, the westernmost district of Arunachal Pradesh. So to that extent, yes, sir, you brought out some very valid points. And another question, sir, which is again related to what you have already said, is that PM Modi has stressed at many forums that Chinese expansionist policy is out of date and will not be accepted by any country, especially since this is not an era of war. Kindly explain the Chinese expansionist policy in the present context, in the backdrop of China's historical theory of expansionism. In very brief, sir, because we have 2-3 more questions, and then we have some other students who would want to ask you some questions.
Okay, in short, I'll just tell you, if you look at the China after 1949, when the Chinese government was spun out, Taiwan, they are not able to get few islands of Taiwan also. They thought to take over. They took over only 2 small islands north of the Taiwan. But other islands were 4 to 5 kilometers from China, they are not able to take over. Mongolia, this side. India also they've been trying. Only place they succeeded in the Indian border because of our weaknesses. Okay? So expansion policy, China ka man to karta hai, they wants to expand. But what they have done, if you look at them, what actually they have done from 1960 onwards. But only thing they have done, they have invited or they have encouraged the feeling about China amongst all of the countries. And why they were doing it, it is not understood. The expansion attitude तो है, will तो है, they've got a will to कब्जा करना है, but कैसे कर सकते हैं, that yet to be seen. So now it is a pressure of the international policy, and why they want it, it is still difficult. Probably they want to create and still be in the relevant in the scenario where the confusion continues and keep becoming a military power. That's all. Not much I want to say on this issue.
Yes, sir. You have already spoken about the economic interdependence. You have elaborated well on that. So, what are the multiple fronts that we have to? You have already mentioned that we should go about Make in India, becoming self-reliant and all that. And also, we must prepare our border areas in defensive manner and offensive manner. And government has done a good job, sir. BRO, I was reading a report of Times of India of day before yesterday. It gives out the number of kilometers of roads that have been constructed in last 5 years, which is quite creditable, sir. Especially in Arunachal, they have created over 3,000 kilometers of roads within Arunachal itself. And in Northeast, in Nagaland and Mizoram and one more state, they have created more than 1,000 kilometers. But sir, being nuclear countries, how do you think this will play out? Should India encourage China to stop this belligerence right away, or should it challenge it? And we should not succumb to their pressures.
Being a nuclear is an advantage, definitely. Because to coming to a negotiation table is only possible if you are strong enough. With the China, we have to be strong. And nuclear power was must, and the government did it, and we are fairly well off in the continent in the nuclear power, intercontinental ballistic long-range missiles, which can have a nuclear head or the conventional head. We are quite powerful on this stage. At the same time, Indian Air Force is very, very well off as compared to China Air Force. And you have geographical location is such that our aircrafts can perform the best. And that is the main force where it can counter China's expansion. And it was not used in the 1962. This was one of the major reasons why India lost. Secondly, now India has to plan in the territorial water portion. Where China wants to come, they came close to Sri Lanka. They want to Pakistan. But now these countries are slowly realizing it. We took help from China. Finally, they have sold the country. So now the other countries have started learning from, realizing the mistake and the impact of China has to reduce in the Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, and from the Arabian Sea. But India is doing quite well, Navy, and having a good relations with Vietnam, Indonesia, otherwise, where it is their help and their interference is required to have a control over the main trade routes which passes through this area. So India is doing fairly well in this issue and this aspect, and army is well equipped, and you are quite well off to counter them. China knows about it. Okay? तो छोटा मोटा करेगा, but at least longer and step, मतलब very hard step against Indian defense cannot be taken by China. Will never be taken by China.
That's a very good observation, sir, especially related to our aircraft performances, because we will be flying from almost plain areas,
Yes.
and our load carrying capacities are going to be much bigger, and we can then deliver heavier loads onto the enemy side, whereas they have that disadvantage of taking off from high altitude areas. So that's one. And the kind of flexibility that our aircrafts have, we have the capability geographically to handle both the sectors, even the Pak western borders and also to the eastern border equally. And same squadron can actually, from Ambala or somewhere in Punjab, can tackle both the sides. Very well. Yes, sir. Coming to the next issue, should China not take advantage of friendly relations with India to counter against the countervailing action against the belligerence of Western countries and US? It should be in the interest of both these countries, India and China, to be together at this time wherein they can go together hand in hand.
Yeah, this is the most practical approach what Manoj here said. China, I don't know why they are resorting to all this disturbance with India. Because if they want to become a world giant and replace USA one part, it requires direct or indirect help from India. But why it is doing so, it is not being understood. Probably they want India to mellow down and to suppress so that they can follow them, which is not possible. So what you are saying, it will come up. And now in the future, you see there are certain problems which are common to India will be common to China also. This is one of the questions when you ask in UPSC, like what you said, I'm not a member, but I'm an interview panel. I'm an advisor. So we asked one of that IFS aspirants. So that girl came out of this question, that what problem India is going to have that the difference of religions and how people are coming up, other fighting. China is going to have soon. To fight that, China will require the help of India. However, the interview panels people didn't agree initially, but later on realized this is tomorrow's India's future, and China will, our external other thing, they will convince them we are going to have the same problem. And what Prime Minister also said that this is not a century of war; it has to be understood. So we are sure that will come onto the common platform, but not as a second to China. India will come with China with that power, but you have to work a little hard for it. Manoj?
I had to unmute it. What I'm saying, sir, thank you so much for bringing out all these points. And to sum up, I will add to some of your points. There are 3-4 reasons ascribed to the growing anxiety of China, leading to such blatant provocations at the LAC, especially with India. Number one, India is developing its border infrastructure, including roads, bridges, airstrips, and defensive bunkers, etc. As you mentioned, that important airstrip of DBO. Second point is to counter India's growing influence in the international geopolitics, especially now because in the light of G20's presidency, it is trying to derail India's apex position. Also, third point is to keep the border dispute alive so that it could bargain its claim, as you mentioned, on Arunachal Pradesh for Aksai Chin, which is a mineral-rich region illegally occupied by China. And lastly, as you mentioned, to distract attention of their local population from their internal crises.
Yes,
like COVID-19, economic slowdown, inflation, a meltdown in banking and real estate sectors. Also, of course, it's in the best interest of both these countries to go hand in hand, as brought out by you. Now we have the platform open for question and answers, and we will have Mr. Vivek to kindly ask your question.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for giving such insightful thoughts on this important topic. Thank you, sir. So, sir, first of all, I would like to thank you. And my question is, sir, being optimistic in foreign policy is good, but have we not been so much optimistic, too optimistic towards China? Whether from starting as recognized one of the first country recognizing China as a country, as a sovereign country, from Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, and then from not making proper infrastructure along the border, or whether over dependence as far as economy is concerned. All these lacunas in our policies, we can see how these lacunas happen, sir, because from outside we think that there are very intellectual people are sitting over there who are making the policies. Then how these type of lacunas can happen?
Vivek, absolutely your questions is right on that. आपने अच्छी टाइम पे स्ट्राइक किया है. देखिए 1949 they became independent after control. They got control from the previous government in 1949. India has become 1947. They were forward looking. Okay. India never considered, I not say never considered the part of them, but the development in the entire sector was very, very minimal. To give you an example, entire Northeast was connected by only one bridge, Gwalpara, just sort of Guwahati, that was a rail and road bridge. But the north, leave aside that border, even the Northeast was neglected. And plus, we were slightly bent towards the communism, socialism, which are almost similar. So now, what they always thought that we should not fight, and the importance of the defense forces were never given. There was a time on the discussion thinking that Indian police is good enough. Why should we fight China? So now, since we are more suppressed, we didn't want to take on them. China controlled the India and suppressed India, whatever they wanted. They came up to Tawang, even about to come to Tejpur, and they went back. What they wanted, they took over, and they went back also. So they went back at their will to show that we whatever हम जो भी करना चाहते हैं हम कर लेंगे. But again, what has happened? Now look at the Indian decision, the financial decision, economic decision, right from the 47 onwards. India was, I believe, India GDP in the 40s was still, though being under British rule, still was quite ahead. But it took a slump. It came down further. It took quite some time to take important decision by Narasimha Rao when he became a prime minister. India opening up, in spite of having so much of raw material, in spite of having so much food products, everything can be controlled. Instead of looking inside and how to increase, we went absurd. And people at par, though they say that we are intelligent log hain, ye karenge, but the decisions all went wrong. Remember, we can negotiate, we can control only if we are powerful. Okay? And India is a place which has got enough resources. India is the only country which can survive on its own. Because the past season we have suffered, we have seen what America gave us is PL 480, that entire our agriculture fields were spoiled. It has been overdone by people like Lal Bahadur Shastri, who took a call, encourage Jawans, encourage Kisan so that it can start growing. So all this, even the agriculture products, India was agriculture based. Agriculture, animal husbandry should have taken off much earlier. Instead of 40, 50 years ago, we would have been far ahead of China. So that definitely a lapse. Gap has built up. Now gap has started reducing. Now, if you see that our external minister is very powerful statements, if you see that now they have got some control and making some statements. So I think we can look forward, India going ahead. Vivek, whatever problem, whatever question you got, I'm fully agreement with you. Everybody in agreement with you. There are a lot of faults in the policies. People didn't want to do it. They didn't want country as such to grow for the obvious reasons of what they had. It's very difficult to comment on that.
I will add to this, sir, to Vivek's question. Pandit Nehru had once said, politics is a power game and it is 99% of grabbing economic power. So they were not fools, but then I think resources were also limited. We had limited resources and we had to decide whether we want getting the population out of poverty, getting industrialization, and defense was actually, they were tricked into Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai for sure. There's no doubt about it. But then thereafter, we have given them hard fist. There's no doubt about it. I just wanted to bring out a few other important issues, alarming aspect that I talk about, that China exports to us finished goods, like I mentioned earlier, like laptops, palm tops, solar cells, urea, electronic items, machinery, and mechanical appliances. That is finished goods. And we are only exporting raw material, that is, and our budget deficit is almost 76 billion dollars, which is quite a bit. We must fill this gap, and this can only happen with government pushing its agenda to get this gap down. Also, you will be seeing very interesting bonhomie happening between China, between Saudi Arabia, UAE, and also Iran. It is China which is getting everybody, including the two enemies, together. And this is to secure its energy needs, because India and China are the biggest energy consumption countries. So we have to, and India also is foraying into different directions, taking oil from Russia, taking oil from UAE. We have deals with Aramco in Saudi. So both these countries are trying to working out towards energy security, which is very important. So anything else that anybody would want to ask?
Thank you so much, sir, for your deep insights on this crucial topic that is grappling to all of us. And thanks, Manoj sir, for your enlightening question to Tiwari sir. And thanks, dear friend Vivek, for being here and your important questions. The kind of we have optimism, like in foreign policy, we always talk about talks and tension. This is the question: do the talks and tension coexist each other? But however, we should know to take balance and to maintain the proportionate of whether the tension and the talks, which is highly important for the time being. So now the time has come to strengthen our strategic calculations and strategic power. So thank you so much, sir, for this important topic and for your enlightenment, insights on this topic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for.
Right, sir. Going off. Thank you. Thanks. Nice.
Right.
Thanks for hearing me.
Thanks for taking time out, and we will have more of these sessions together.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. We are really thankful to you, sir.